I thought I'd do something slightly different with this particular blog, at least compared to what I've been doing in previous blogs. I wanted to share a little bit about my experience with EHRA in Namibia, and that stands for Elephant Human Relations Aid. And the reason I want to share that is really for two reasons. One is particularly relevant if you want to shoot wildlife. I think this is a very good way of doing it. And also if you are thinking of travel now that slowly we're beginning to open up again, and if travel is on your radar, on your horizon, it might be worth considering volunteering as a way of doing it, because it does give you a different perspective and a different insight into how other people are living. So I'll just explain a little bit about what I was doing. So I joined and only did a 2-week session with EHRA, but I appreciate for a lot of people that's enough. And the first week was spent basically protecting infrastructure from the damage that elephants do. And the second week was tracking the local population of elephants so that we could just monitor their health. We could look at what their numbers were doing, all this kind of stuff. Now, the reason that I found this really interesting, and I think the big eye-opener for me, was talking to a local family when we were camped out building this big wall. So it was a double-ringed wall made of stone. We would collect all the stones, put them together, and we were completing it. The previous group had got it about halfway, and we did the other half. And the wall is 2 meters high. It's double-ringed, so elephants can't knock it down. It's 2 meters high, so they can't climb over it. And it protects the water tower, which then in turn provides water for the local villages and local farms. And people would often come by while we were working and just fill up cans in the back of their cars and head off again, or even bring their goats through and have the goats just drink out of a trough while we were working around them. Now, the reason that to me it was eye-opening is that I hadn't realized the local population regarded the elephants with an almost supernatural fear. It was the boogeyman turning up. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One is that going back a few years, now a few decades, there was civil war in that area, or there was war in that area of Namibia, which drove out the local population of elephants that used to live there. They decided to go further north into Angola, and that's where they lived for a while. And it also meant the local populations of people also cleared out because of the dangers due to this war going on. Once the war was over, people began to move back in, but it wasn't necessarily the same people who lived there before. And a lot of the people who live there now had never grown up with elephants. And then a few years later, after they came in, the elephants began to move back in again. And if you go to the EHRA Namibia website, you'll see a story of Vortica, which is the bull elephant that first appeared in the area before the elephants came back, and he was kind of checking things out. And then he brought the other elephants back with him, and it became part of their range. And bear in mind, elephants can travel up to 75 kilometers in a night looking for food. So they obviously travel quite a large area. However, the problem for the locals was that it meant that they had never lived with elephants before. So there were difficulties. And the problem with the elephants is that they're quite short-sighted, and they can be quite easily startled. And obviously, like any animal, if they're startled, they'll lash out. And that was what was happening, and people did get killed. And in fact, a couple that we spoke to, they were taking their family for a walk past where we were camped out while we were building the wall. They had lost a friend of theirs a little while previously, who had been with a friend of his, and they'd both been out drinking that night. They were sort of staggering back home as you do, and they came across an elephant, and it hadn't seen them. They hadn't seen it until they were on top of it. And unfortunately, it was startled, it lashed out, and one of the guys was killed. So this is where it becomes a bit of a problem. So EHRA have been doing an awful lot to educate people in how to live with the elephants, to understand them more, understand their range, where they go, what they do. And the good news is that the local people are now beginning to regard those elephants as their elephants. So there is definitely a change in attitude that's happened due to the work that EHRA were doing. So the relevance of all this is to hopefully give you a little bit of insight of what's going on with this particular group in Namibia. In fact, the book here that you can see is a collection of black and white photographs in this particular one. There's another book, but they're from photographs that I took of elephants while I was volunteering in Namibia. And the intention is that money from the sales of these books goes to support EHRA Namibia. And in fact, I'm also trying to provide a bit of money through fine art print sales as well. Because I do believe what they're doing is important, because the more we understand animals, particularly local people, the better they're positioned to begin to protect them and look after them. And obviously the local people are best placed to do what they can to prevent poaching and environmental damage, which is obviously having a major impact on wild animal populations. And they're often, though, the sort of least well-off people in the chain. So anything that helps local people work with conservation efforts is a really good thing. The other reason I suggest that you consider volunteering is that often you're the only people around these animals when you find them. So it's the complete opposite to the sort of circus that you get in places like Tanzania, in Kenya, South Africa, wherever. You know, all of the popular tourist spots. What I see again and again when I've been on those is that you get a group of vehicles, maybe 4, 5, 6, and they're all around one animal, trying to each give their clients the best view of it. But it becomes an absolute circus. So I don't like that. And what I found through volunteering is that you're often on private reserves, or you're way out in the bush where because you've been tracking for several days. So you're going where the regular tourist trips don't go. And therefore your experience is completely different, and I think much more rewarding for both you as a visitor and the animal itself. So that's the blog. That's what I wanted to share with you. I hope you found that interesting, and I will speak to you again in a future blog. Bye for now.